In today's video, I'm going to be sharing more rules for fair fighting. These are the rules that I've used with literally hundreds of couples that I've worked with in my practice. And so you're going to want to be sure to watch to the end because you're going to want to compile all of these rules and pull them out of your toolbox the next time that you have a conflict with your partner. Hi there, it's Alicia Taverner, licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm the owner of Rancho Counseling, where we help couples on the brink to improve their communication, their connection, their intimacy, and their trust. Welcome back to my channel. Thanks so much for watching. This is the second part of my series on rules for fair fighting. So if you haven't watched the first video, be sure to click the link so that you can skip on back to see the first part of this video series where I talk about rules for fair fighting, what you should be talking about, how you should be talking, and what you should avoid when you're having a conflict with your partner. So let's go ahead and dive in for today. The next rule that I have to share with you in my rules for fair fighting is don't mind read. So many times when I'm working with couples, I hear somebody say, well, if I bring that up, I know exactly how he's going to respond. Or if I talk about that, I know exactly what she's going to say. But guess what? We aren't mind readers. You may have been with your partner for 5, 10, 100 years. It doesn't really matter. Many times their responses can be totally surprising. And so rather than mind reading and knowing exactly why they're saying something or why they're doing something, be sure to ask. The next rule that I'm going to share kind of goes along with what I was previously saying, and it's don't play psychologist, right? Leave that to the professionals like us at Rancho Counseling. But when you assume that you understand somebody and when you assume that you know why they're saying something or where something is coming from, it can be really, really annoying. So instead of assuming and making interpretations, allow your partner the opportunity to explain themselves. Ask questions and be curious. Another rule for fair fighting is when you're engaging in conflict with your partner, be sure that you're not engaging in emotional blackmail or name calling. Words said in anger can never be taken back. So many times I work with couples who are just describing past hurts that have come from previous conflicts that they've gotten into. These hurts could have happened months or even years before they've even stepped foot in my door. So many times couples will tell me that they have no idea what the conflict was even about. However, they remember exactly how those words made them feel. Name calling is incredibly hurtful, so refrain from that, along with emotional blackmail, which is when you tell somebody, well, if you loved me, you wouldn't do this, or if you loved me, you would just see my point, or if you loved me, you would just do what I tell you. These patterns are extremely unhealthy for relationships, and so you want to avoid them at all costs. When you agree on a way to settle an issue, be sure to follow through and keep your word. Those agreements should be reassessed later to make sure that everybody's still feeling comfortable with the resolution that you've come up with. However, if there's been no follow through, you want to avoid finger pointing and placing blame or criticizing, but you just want to check in and refresh your partner's memory. Hey, remember when we had that disagreement last week? In order to be more helpful, you had agreed that you were going to put the kids to bed all of this week while I'm busy at work. You then want to check in and ask if there's some reason why there hasn't been any follow through. And that sounds something like, I'm just checking in because this week doesn't seem to be going as planned. The next thing that you want to remember when you're engaging in conflict is that you want to recognize when things are no longer productive and stop. When conflicts arise, it's really easy to get flooded. When we get flooded, we get a rush of cortisol and a couple other hormones. Our heart rate tends to rise, typically between 80 and 100, and we get into that fight or flight mode. When this happens, we're no longer using the part of the brain that helps us reason. And so when you feel yourself getting flooded, you want to ask your partner for a timeout. Let them know, hey, you know what, I don't think that this conflict is effective any longer. I'm going to start to say mean things or things that I don't mean, so I'd really like a timeout. When you ask for a timeout, there's a couple key things that you want to remember. Number one, you want to convey that what your partner is saying is important. And so that sounds like, you know what, this conflict is kind of getting out of hand. I think that I'm going to start saying something that I don't necessarily mean. And so I'd like to take a time out. I know that this is important. However, I'd like to talk about it later when we put the kids to bed. The second part that you're conveying to your partner is that you're going to reconvene and continue the conversation. And then the third part to a timeout is having that time to revisit the conversation. So if you said that you're going to revisit the conversation after the kids go to bed, you have to keep up your end of the bargain and at least check in. If it's still not a good time, then you can let your partner know, I'm still feeling really emotional. Let's try to talk about this tomorrow. When tomorrow comes around, you have to have the conversation and continue the argument. The next thing that's important to remember when you're engaging in conflict is that you are in control of your emotions. We all get angry and heated sometimes, and that's not necessarily the biggest issue. The biggest issue is what you do with that anger. Your partner is not to blame for getting you into this state of emotion. So avoid blaming them for making you angry, sad, hurt. We are in control of our own emotions. Take responsibility for them and communicate them effectively. The last thing that I'll share with you today is the structure of a constructive conflict. The basic outline goes something like this. The first thing that you want to do is state your complaint or your gripe with your partner. I'll use the example of washing dishes. When we're communicating, we want to use I statements. So start with I, so that you're not putting your partner on the defense. The moment that you start with the word you, your partner's defenses come up and they can no longer hear what you have to say. They're most likely just going to be busy thinking about a way to defend themselves. So going back to that example, it would sound something like, hey, when the dishes aren't done and when I get home from work late, it just makes me feel upset because it makes me feel like we're not on the same team. The next thing that you want to do is make a suggestion or make a request. What is it that you need or want from your partner? Going back to this example, it would sound something like, tomorrow, do you think you can make sure that the dishes are done before I get home from work? I'd really, really appreciate it. So the last part is reaching a solution or a resolution. And so either your partner is going to say okay, or they're going to list reasons why that can't possibly be done. And in that case, that's when you start to have more conversation and communication about ways that you can both reach the end goal. And so just to end for today, I'm going to go back to rule number 1, which is the most important rule, and that is that fight should be held in order to reach a solution. Remember that the next time that you get into a conflict with your partner. So remember, it's not about not having conflict. We're always going to have conflict, especially in healthy relationships. You come from 2 different sets of parents, 2 different ideals, 2 different belief systems. You're always going to have conflict, and that's okay. It's just really about how you manage that conflict between you and your partner. So that's it. Those are my rules for fair fighting. If you'd like to get a PDF copy of them, I'm going to post a link in the description below. So be sure to click on that so that you can get a written copy. You can post it on your fridge so that the next time that you're engaging in conflict with your partner, you'll know exactly what to do. Be sure to hit like and the subscribe button so that you don't miss out on any of these videos that can help you improve your communication, your connection, your trust, and your intimacy. Thanks so much for watching.